Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another session of the ISM Lunch and Learn webinars. Today we're going to be talking about Crystal Reports Basics, Crystal Reports 101 with our consultant, George. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We will have everyone on mute until the presentation is complete, at which time we will then open it up for questions. If something comes up during the presentation, please feel free to chat me or put it in the question pane, and we'll address it at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn everything over to George. George, thank you and welcome.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be using the Sage 2016 version. It's a little bit slow today, so just bear with me if there's some technical issues. I'll let you guys in on it. I want to talk to you guys about Crystal Reports, and we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to show you the basics. And today I'm actually going to do some, a lot of people have been asking about sub-reporting. So rather than show field introduction into to the Crystal Reports via like a UDF or something like that, I figured I'll use that time and kind of show you guys a little bit about sub-reports and how to integrate those sub-reports into your Crystal. It's a little bit more of an advanced function, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. So with that, I'm going to touch base on the layouts in Sage. Well, when you're working with Crystal Reports, it's very critical that you understand the files that you're trying to attack. For example, as you probably know, in Sage, we have detail files, we have header files, and it's the structure that Sage has always been using. I don't see them changing it anytime soon, but there are instances where you'll want to hit a header record or a detail record depending on, you know, what type of information you're looking at. If you're looking for line detail information, obviously you're going to hit the detail side. If you're looking for, like, you know, ship to address, the person who entered it, etc., you're going to pull that from the header. Where you find that information is kind of interesting. They've actually got it in this information center here. And we're going to go ahead and take a quick peek at that. I'm going to show you how to get down to that and just how to browse around that. But on the right-hand side, you'll see this information center. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see this little link there called Resources. At the top of Resources, there's some information about the Help Center and stuff like that. Just some pertinent stuff that, like, commonly asked questions, things like that. Down towards the bottom is there's a place called File Layouts and Program Information. That's where you want to be when you're looking to build a file or to build a report. The file layout is going to definitely show you every type of item that's available in that report. You can also do it through Crystal, and I'll show you that as well. It's just a little easier to come through here, figure out what you're going to develop, and then add those files to the Crystal report. And we'll cover that as well. But for starters, we're going to probably use sales order today. So I'm going to look here. If you look, this is all the sales order files that are attached in Sage. Some of these files are, you know, different on your end because you might have modifications or things like that. But basically, all the basics are there, and you can see everything. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and just look at the header. I just want you to see it, and that way I can kind of explain a little bit about the file. So if you look at this, you have the basics. This is your primary key, which is an invoice number. This is your invoice number, and it's basically telling you what type it is. It's a 7-character string, and it's invoice number. Things where you're going to be selecting like the type, invoice type, this is a good reference point to come back to, because if, let's say in Crystal, you want to just grab only credit memos or only debit memos or only adjustments, you would need to specify that in the report to say, you know, CM or IN or DM. And so you can see here easily what those values are that are stock in Sage. And then just go into Crystal and add those in. So this is a very powerful tool, good thing to know. Just like pointing it out to people, because a lot of people don't even know it exists. And you can export that out and put it in a PDF and save it somewhere. You know, there's some documents out there on the web on how to do that. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Crystal side. And obviously, this is the blanket, you know, Crystal interface. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the blank report. And we're just going to select the SOTA standard Mass 90 connection. In some cases, you might create a new connection where you're going to, link out to a silent ODBC or something like that to pull data in, and that's fine. You can do that. For now, we're just going to use ABX and log in. So this login prompt, you'll probably see this a lot in Sage. It's basically the login prompt to the ODBC, which is basically just your Sage username and password. And in here, I'm going to be working with sales order today. I kind of want to show you guys the sales order stuff. So we're just going to come down in here and we're going to grab the sales order header, history header, and the history detail. So I'm going to grab this, drop it in. I'm going to grab the detail and I'm going to drop it in, and I'm going to say OK. If you notice this linking expert, it kind of automatically links the files together for you. In this instance, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just linking the sales order header to the detail. There are instances where you will have to get a little bit trickier with it, and you're going to have to, come in here and select that, the sales order number is equal to the bill of material number or something to that effect. So that's one thing to look for, but in general, it pretty much lines it up for you. The only thing you might have to do is like change the join or something of that effect. And that's something that I rarely see anymore. I mean, I see it, but it's on pretty complex reports. So for the simple stuff, we're just going to go out here. You have your header, your page header, your report header, and I'm basically going to explain this. This is just what it says. It's going to be the report header. So this is going to show up pretty much one time at the front of the report, whatever you put in this area here. This page header is going to show up just in the page header. It's going to be on every single page header, and it's going to show up throughout the pages on the report. Same thing with the footer and the page, the report footer and page footer. This is going to show once. This is going to show across all pages. The details section will show across all pages as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and drag some stuff in here just to kind of play around. I'm going to drag in a sales order number and a sales order date. And then we'll grab, let's see, an AR number and division. So right now we have this report built, and if you look at it, the page header, every time I run this report, these columns right here are going to show up on the report. I can change them. I can do things like uncheck them, or I could come in here and I could do a box around it to make it look pretty, and I'll just go ahead and show you kind of how that looks. So we'll do a box here and we'll just shade it in. And it's all pretty relative. I mean, it's pretty much like working with Word or Excel, where you just come in, you format the box, you tell it you want a drop shadow or you want to fill it with, certain color. So it's really kind of essentially like a program that you're already comfortable working with. It's just a matter of linking the files correctly and dropping the data in right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just refresh it. This little button right here, F5, or the refresh button, will refresh the data with the current data set. So I don't have any variables in here. I don't have any kind of exclusions. I want all raw data for the sales order history file for this stuff. So you can see this is a demo database. There's not much there, but there is some stuff. So I pulled out the sales order number, I got the date in here, and I've got my division and my customer. So that's a simple way to just get some basic data out. But I want to put in some header information. So I'm going to kind of change this around a little bit, because what I want to see is, I don't really care about the invoice number or the customer number or the division. I'm not really caring about that. I want to see some detail. I want to see some nitty gritty. I want to get down to the line and see some items. So I'm going to drop the item in here and I'm going to refresh it. I just want to see and make sure that we've got some good data in there. So we got refresh report data, and it's just asking you if you'd like to, refresh and pull in the new data. So you can see here on this line, I've got the one sales order and another sales order, or the same sales order, two different lines. So there's two detail items on that line. You're going to get double lines. If this happens, what you want to do is technically create a group. So you can create a group by the sales order number, and then that'll give you a group that just shows you the one thing in the two lines. And I'm going to just show you how that works. So I'm going to insert a group here. And sorry, my system is running a little slow. It's actually working pretty well for me right now, but it's just a little bit slow. So now I'm going to create this group. So all I do is I come up to insert, like I would in Word or Excel, and just come down and insert a group. With this group now, I can sort on it. So I don't really care to keep seeing the repetitive data. I just want to know that's sales order number 1. I'm going to kind of line it up to this so it sinks in there, and then I'm just going to suppress this. So, because I don't need to see it. So it's better just to get rid of it. When I suppress it, it's going to take it away from the report, but it's still going to be here under the designer. You'll see it. It'll be grayed out. So now I have this information in here, and this all looks good. I can see that it's sales order number 1. I can see the order date and the item code. So this is coming off of the history file. This is what's already been built. So in my travels, I've heard people say, well, I want to see, what this customer ordered based on, whatever period of time. And I want to see what's out there in open sales order. You'll notice in here, we don't have any kind of file in here pointing to the sales order. And sometimes when you do this, or you try to do it in, Excel or in SQL or any of those files, you get some real complex problems with linking. So one of the things that we do is we create sub-reports, and sub-reports in Crystal are pretty powerful tools. And this is where I wanted to get into some of the details on that because, like I said, I get asked about it a lot. It's a complicated technique, and once you get the hang of it and figure out how to link it, it's actually not too bad. So in here, I see that I have, my sales order again, order date, my item code. This is all coming from the history file, if you can see that there. I'm just going to go ahead in here and I'm going to hit insert, and I'm going to do a sub-report. And so you can use the wizard or you can just choose an existing. Most of us will be using the wizard, and I'm just going to call this SO open. So what I'm going to be looking for is the same data set, but I want to look at sales order, and I just want to look at sales order open orders. And we may have to go out there and put an order in, but that's okay, we can do that. So now I have a sales order header and a sales order detail line. I'm going to click next. It's going to do the auto linking for me. I'm just going to tell it I want the sales order number, the order date like the other, and the item code. So we grab the detail, item code, and then we'll grab the header, which will have the order date. So now I basically have the same report, and it wants to know how I want to group it. And I'm just going to group it by the same thing, sales order number A, and then I'm going to go ahead and click next and just finish through all the way. So record selection, I'm not going to worry about. I'm not going to give it a template or anything like that, and I'm just going to go through it and I hit OK. So it's all pretty straightforward. You're basically just building what you just built inside of the report that you're building, if that makes sense. So it's just like setting up a new blank report that you're, adding into the system. So if you see it's linked here, I've got the SO open in here, I've got my grouping here, and now I'm not getting any data. The reason I'm not getting any data is because it's not pulling it correctly. So it gives you a detail section for your sub-report. So if you notice here in the design, we have our detail section, we have our sales order stuff, we have our, our history stuff. And here we also have it, it's just on another tab. So in here I can click on it, and I can see, okay, is this lined up the way it is on the other side? So I always compare, because what I've found is when you do the grouping outside of that wizard, it actually works a little better. But for right now, I'm going to just go ahead and try to look at this and see why the grouping's not coming correctly in. So if you look here on design, you got group header 1, you've got sales order detail, and that's the sales order number. So here is group header 1, the same thing. So these should match up pretty good, but they're not. So I'm going to go ahead and kill it, and I'll show you how to add it in manually. So I just want to see raw data like that. So the grouping part of that wizard can get you into trouble. It's good that it broke for you, so I can kind of show you the difficulty of it. If you can look at this, it's basically the same structure. So right now it's linking out the OB or the sales order number 1. It's got the sales order date of 6/1/2020 and the item code. Obviously, this whole box doesn't belong to just that one item. There's plenty of other sales orders in here. So how do you link this piece to this piece? And that's answered by sub-report links. So we're going to go into sub-report links, and I'm going to look at what fields I have available to me to link to. And I can see here I have the sales order history header and the sales order number. One of the things that hasn't been addressed here is this box. It's kind of a pain because you have to always scroll to the right to see the long file names. I don't know if they're going to fix that or not in the newer versions of Crystal, but it's just something to keep in mind. You always have to scroll over and look for the actual field. So in this one, I'm just going to grab the one that's already there. I know it's sales order number. I want to link sales order number on my sub-report to my sales order number on my main report. And I can do it either by group or I can do it by detail. I'm just going to do it the default way right now and refresh the data. So now you can kind of see that, okay, here's my sales report number 1. Here's the date. Here's what they ordered. This is my open sales orders that haven't been closed yet. This is what the item is that they, or the order number that they're shipping. This is the parts, and there you have your detail. So now you're running from 2 different files. You're running from sales order history, and that's after it's posted, and you're running from sales order invoice. So with the sub-reports, obviously you can format them. I'm going to go ahead and go to Format Painter and show you some of that. And so you can change the border, you can make it bigger, thicker, you can do none. A lot of people do none, and then they'll line it up because they're mainly looking at like line detail items. And so we'd have none here, and that takes away the box. And then you can see like this is kind of convoluted, like it's sideways, it looks to the right, whatever. You can come into that sub-report, and what we do is we just suppress all this data because we don't really want to see it all. We just want to see the nuts and bolts of it. We want to see the good stuff. So I just suppress all this other stuff out, and that will actually give you a cleaner looking report. So now you can see my report's kind of getting smaller, it's lining up better, it looks a little different, etc. So that's the gist of sub-reporting. You can do this when you're having issues running from one file to another. Sometimes people want to look at, maybe they want to look at an AP vendor off a PO report. The only way to get that on the same report is by utilizing the sub-report. And you can do that. You can go out to the AP vendor and put all the AP vendor information on one side, and then go out to the PO side and see all the POs that were related to that vendor. So one of the things that we want to talk about as well is we want to talk about suppression and what suppression does and how we use it. Because there may be instances, and this is a demo data set, obviously, but if you were to run this report with no parameters and no variables on any of this stuff, you would get sometimes thousands of pages of Crystal reports. So what we do to combat that is we build in selection criteria. It's pretty straightforward. We come up to the report and we use select expert. Select expert lets us group by record or by group. So most of the time I will be using record because I want to select the group, the item, the detail item that I'm looking for by record number. So I want to grab it by, the detail line item, or like for example, like a date or an item code. I only want to grab this particular range of item codes, etc. So we're going to talk about this in detail a little bit because this is critically important to getting out data that is workable within, you know, another format like Excel or Access or something to that effect. So I'm going to go ahead and look up this. I'm going to go ahead and create this view. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the sales order number, and I'm going to say that it is only equal to 5. So sales order number 5. And you can see that it's pretty straightforward. There's a bunch of variables in here, and you can say it's any value, is not equal to, is one of, is not one of. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different types of formula that you can do. So I can come in here and say is equal to 5, and as soon as I hit this and refresh data, the only thing I'm going to see is 5 all the way down. If I come back up here and I do a select expert on the record and I delete that and I add a new one, let's just say I wanted to do it by date, and I could say is equal to or in the period of 5. This probably won't work because I'm not too close to the date, but this is a good one to look at. When you're using in the period or a date range, or you're saying like current date is today's date minus 365 or minus 7 or whatever it is, you always want to use make sure that you understand that this date and anything you do with the date selection range is going to be running off your system date down here. So if I come in and let's say I wanted to run a report on Monday for something that happened Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I need to make sure that I have the current date function in here and a -3, or sometimes it's -2, however you're doing your math on the timing. But it's selectable in here, and you can also create custom formulas. So you could come in here and say is current date, and I can use the formula editor for this. So I'll just say here, sales order header, the sales order history order date is equal to current date. And so what that's going to do is only run it for today. So if I hit X2 on this and I save it, and that formula, then I'm going to see nothing basically in this report because I'm not in that 2020 date. But if I were to change that, I would be able to select records. So basically, if I do this and I were to go in and calculate the difference of days between 4/19/2018 and 5/3/2020, I could put that in and say, plus 580 days or whatever. So that is a good way to look at that current date. Just remember that if the current date, if you're using the current date formula in there, you're going to want to make sure that it's, and understand that it's running off the system date. So I'm going to go ahead and take that formula out so we can continue working on this piece. But yeah, so I can also do things like ranges of parameters. So let's say that I only want to run it for a certain type of item. I can come in and create a parameter range, or maybe a group of items, right? I can come in and I can do a new parameter. So Field Explorer is a pretty powerful area of Crystal. You'll be in that a lot. If you don't have it or you see it, it's like you come into Crystal and your screen looks like this, then you just come up to Window, you go into View, and you click on Field Explorer, and then you'll have your Field Explorer there, and you see your database fields. Your version might look like this, where it's all shrinked up, but you just click on database fields, and there you have it. This is your main tool area. You're going to use this a lot, and you're going to use Insert a lot and Report a lot. Those would be the main ones that you're using in Crystal. So in here, on this one, it's the sales order header and the sales order detail, but I want to put a parameter field on that. I want to say, hey, you know what? I want to see this parameter of item number in the range of whatever, or I want to see the date. Let's do date in the range of the dates that I put. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say it's a date. I'm going to go in down to the bottom, and I'm going to do a range change. So you see this area here, it says allow range values. You just select on that and say true. So allow range values goes to true, you say okay. And now I have this parameter. And now I can select that parameter. So now if you notice when I come into select expert and I grab the date, I'm going to get a value drop down that's a question mark. Sorry, I don't know, it's not showing. That's right. And bear with me 1 second. It's not wanting to show up here in this report. Let me put it in there. Let's drop it in there. So, all right. So now I should see the date. So in here, if I click on order date, I should be able to see is equal to, and then it should be this. It's still not showing up. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but normally what it'll do is it'll show up and it'll have a question mark in front of it. So the parameter field there will actually be a range of dates. So we can try it again because we have some time. I'm just going to go ahead and I want to show it to you because it's kind of important. So we'll take this out, come into parameter. I'm just going to specify that it's the sales order date, and then go up to the report. Normally you don't have to do this. You can actually just have it be blank, but for some reason, and it might be this causing my issue, that it's already there and I was playing with it, but give me a second and we'll figure it out. Okay, so sales order date is equal to, and I should see the parameter or in between. I'm not seeing that parameter, and I'm not sure why, but that's essentially the way you do it. It's just not showing up for me, and I'm not sure why it's not showing up. It could be something with my setup. So once you have the parameter in there, let me do this. I want to try something because it's important to show you. Make a change and see if it'll stick. Did I lose everybody?
No, George, everybody's still here.
Yeah, all my screens just went dark. I think it's my virtual machine. Give me a second. Okay, I'm here. I'm back. It's only on one screen. Okay, I apologize for that delay, guys. Sorry. Okay, so parameter fields, you select those by coming in here. You're doing your record. You're selecting your parameter, and you add the parameter value here. Yeah, it's still not there. I'm going to just create a new parameter field because I do want to show it to you, and it's kind of important. I just don't know why it's not showing up here right now. So again, I'm just going to select the basic string because that's what it is. I'm going to allow a range of fields, and I'm going to select them up here, and I'm going to use item code this time. Okay, so it's really odd because now I'm seeing the date code there, and I'm seeing the item code. So you can kind of see sometimes it's just really quirky and it takes a minute to show up or whatnot. But and it could be that I already put a formula on the date and I was showing you guys how to use the current date, and that's what's causing it. But basically, it's real simple. Like I said, you just create the parameter over here. You basically default it. You don't have to select any date information. You just want to select that you're using a range value, and then when you come in, it's there. You select it. You hit OK. Now, whenever I go to run this report, the first thing I'm going to get asked is for a range of items. And so I can put in my item, I can key it in, I can, select whatever range I want for my items, and it varies by business, obviously. But once I put the values in here, then I can select the data based on those reports. So that's the basic functionality of the Select Expert on the record side. It's pretty powerful. You can go through a lot of different things, and you can get data to be a lot more compacted to what you're actually looking for. Whereas just looking at it as we're an Excel spreadsheet and you have very little query capabilities to pull out like certain date ranges, certain item ranges, certain customer ranges. Maybe you want to just look at, only customers that shipped in the last 6 months or things like that. So real powerful to use the parameters, and obviously we go over it a little bit more in the the more advanced training. But just wanted to give you guys a brief overview on that. It does look like we have some time to go into some UDF creations and getting those into Crystal. I can go ahead and show you guys that. A lot of times people come and say, hey, I need a UDF, but how do I get it to show up on my Crystal report? Or how do I get it to show up, on my form that I'm using for, sales order or whatnot? And the way that we do that is by creating UDFs. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out. I'll just save it in case we need to come back to it. I don't think we will. And then I'm just going to go ahead and minimize this because I don't want to have to launch it again with my system acting up. And I'm going to go into Custom Office. Most of you should have Custom Office. If you don't, let us know and we'll get you situated with that. I am going to create a user-defined field. And when it decides to come up, we'll get it going. So I want to create in the sales order header a field in Custom Office. I'm just going to create one calling it, we'll probably just call it today's date or something. So we'll create an item in here. We'll call it, April 18th test. So I've created this UDF, and this UDF I set up is now a functional piece of data. What kind of data do I want it to be? Do I want it to be a multi-line? Do I want it to be a drop-down box, a list box, or a checkbox? In most cases, you'll be using this multi-line, which is ML, and you'll just set a string value on it. So in this case, I'm just going to set a value length of 10. I'm not really trying to make it really big. I know it's just a regular comment field. I'm not going to go crazy with it. So on my data sources, I'm going to want to select that it's a sales order bus so that it goes through and updates all that information. And again, this is a little bit more advanced, but if you've had experience building, the customer information, or if you've had experience building any type of UDF, then you know how to already get in here and do this. It's just a matter of getting the data over to Crystal. In this case, I am going to just let this write, and then I'll update it in another field. So I'm going to go ahead and OK this. Remember, when you're creating these UDFs, you're basically writing to the defined dictionary. So you'll need to make sure that everybody's out of the system when you're making changes to a custom UDF or a custom field. So we're going to let that write. And then we are going to go in and add it to a screen. And this can take time depending on how much data elements you have or how much customizations you have. When you add a customization, it has to go out and look at all the users that have customizations in that field and then update them accordingly. All right, so we got that in the header. Now, if I go look at my sales order header in custom office, I should be able to see it once I add it in. So now I'm going to go to sales order. I'm going to just go to sales order entry, and I'm going to go to the let's go to the header. So another thing to remember is on this side is when you're adding the custom fields to header or any of the detail lines, you'll always see these like D main. That's the main one. That's the main one in wide mode. This is the main one in header. This is the wide mode one. Same thing for credit card. Every screen has a functional wide screen. If you make a change in the first one, it will not show on this one. So you have to be cautious to that and just conscious of it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that custom field to here. I'm going to modify my already existing company one that's all. It's got everything for everybody. And I'm just going to find my field and insert it. So I'm just going to put it over here because it looks like it's the only place I have room. And once I click on the add the field button, this guy here, it's going to open up a selection and let me select the file name. It just takes a minute to load. Once it loads, you'll see all the files in there. So now you can see I have this UDF April 18th test that we put in there, and we're just going to select that to be this field. I can move this around and make it look a little prettier, etc. And then I just save it. Once I save it, the next time I open up my Sage, it should be there. And so I'll go into sales order now and see my handiwork. We'll look at sales order entry, and we'll just create a new sales order and grab a vendor. And you can see our boxes down here, and I can type information in, etc. So that is adding the field. So now, how do I get that field to my report? Like, let's say it's a checkbox, or it's, it's a collect freight amount or something where you're saying, you want to be able to see it on a piece of paper that you're printing. Well, now that the field is on there and it's in the system, I can simply just come out and go to the Crystal Reports. And let's say now I want to open a new report and I want to just add in the sales order. So I just want to look at sales order entry, and I want to see anything that has, data in that field. Or I want to just be able to add that field to the data. So I'm going to come down to SO sales order entry. And I'm going to grab the header and the detail because I want to see the header and the detail lines. And it's going to link for me. I'm going to be done here and then just finish. And now I'm going to see the date in there, which I don't want. So I'm going to take it out. And then I'm just going to add in that field. So I'm going to add in the header, sales order header, and the date. And now I want to look for that field. And I put it in the sales order header. So it should be down at the bottom. And it should have the field in there. And it's not there. That is great. Give me a second and I'll find out where it's at. I'm almost wondering if it's looking at the right data source. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, that's why I'm at ABC. Let me just change the database location here and we'll get to the right one. Yep. Interesting that it's not writing it out, but give me a second and let me find out why. Because it should just be pulling the data in from the actual record now that the data is updated. So we've created the table, we've added the table to the screen, and under ABC it should actually be there. So we're going to open up Crystal again and try to get it to come up. And there's ABC. That's the screen I was looking for before. Just do ABC. And then we're just going to add the sales order header and detail. And this time I'm just going to check to see if it's actually there. And now you can see that they're all here. And so you can click and drag on that. And again, I apologize. I don't know what is causing that kind of hiccup, but I'm going to go ahead and rebuild these VMs here shortly. So now if I click on this and I add it in, now I have this date. I can obviously run the report off the date. I didn't actually save anything in that field, but now I can come in and say, okay, give me a report that's only if this checkbox exists, or only this value is equal to yes or no, or some value. And I've just created another powerful way and another powerful tool to be able to report on based on what my individual unique business needs are for that period, or for that, set of reporting tools that you're trying to create. So adding the field in, it does show up. Like I said, if you run into issues like I did, go ahead and just pull out, come back in, insert the correct ODBC again, sign back onto the database like I did. Make sure you're running it for the correct company. Things like that to double check to make sure that you're seeing the field. There are ways to push the field all the way back. So if I'm in sales order header, for example, and I want to make sure that I still have that data that I put in the header push all the way out to the sales order invoice, and then even update the invoice and follow it through. So in history, I can still see it and report off the history. I can do that as well. And the way that you do that is you basically come into Sage and you go into the user-defined table again. You're going to go back to that field, and you're just going to push it out to all the other stuff. So you'll want it to show up in invoice work file, so you can write to the work file, etc. So if I come into the sales order header, let's go to sales order. We're going to the sales order header here. We're going to click on edit fields, and you're going to grab that checkbox and go to data sources, and you'll click the sales order bus. The sales order bus is what's going to push it. Typically, it's going to be maintained by the customer number, and then you can just click all columns, and then you should see the UDF down here somewhere. You might have to do it based on sales order number, and we see where it's going to push it. I got to find where to push it to. Close this. Okay, so here's the file that it's going to push to. So you're going to want to use, if you want it to flow all the way through to the journal, to the AR invoice side, and to the AR invoice history side, You'll want to use the journal update, not the bus, not the sales order bus. You'll want to use the sales journal update and then select the UDF down there. And there's other UDFs in there. I'm not going to focus on why that one didn't come in because I'm pretty sure it's the same reason as the other. But you can see the other notes down here that we did before when I did a different class where you can add this in and now the notes are going to push through. So that is how you kind of link it in there, link it together, and make sure that it pushes out to all the different fields in a very simplistic manner. I mean, obviously we cover this in a lot more detail. And I'm kind of giving you a lot of information. I know it's information overload as far as crystal reports in beginning, but I want you to be able to understand and how to get the most out of the crystal reports and interface that you're using. And I think that the interface itself is pretty straightforward as far as the design. Obviously, you can add different tables and do different types of linkings, and you can look at work files and things of that nature. But I believe that just keeping it simple and getting you some information that will help you with integrating the core pieces of what you're trying to do with your business as far as reporting or, checking things in sales order, or, maybe you have certain types of things that get put on hold and you want to see how many hold orders you have out there. These kind of reporting tools can help you because you can look at, different parameters for that report, et cetera, and how to build those fields. And as far as the file layouts of this, I mean, obviously, one other thing that you can do is, you can do the pictures and the lines and the boxes. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll say, hey, I drew this box and it doesn't stretch across the whole thing, or it's not growing with the report. And so the best way I can define to do boxes is think of it as a logical box. If you're going to put a box somewhere, you don't want it probably this size. You want to drag it all the way across. That way, if you click and drag like the sales order number up here, and you do something like this where let's just pretend that sales order number was like the title of your report, and you wanted to center it, you could do something like this where you have this information in there and you stretch it across the box, and now you can kind of center it so that when your page headers all print, they all kind of line up and match correctly to, the 8.5 by 11 sheet or the 8.5 by 14 sheet, whatever you're using. So that's another common thing we see. We'll see people do things like this where they'll come in and they'll just have that field and they'll grab it in. They can't get it to like center across the page, and it's just simple stuff like that. Like they'll be like, well, I put it in the center, but it's not centering across the page. It's off by a quarter inch or whatever. And so that's a good trick to know, just when you're using with boxes and you're doing the shading and you're adding fields inside of boxes, to stretch it to the extent of the box and then hit the center button so that the format stays correct and true to the actual page setup. Another thing I want to show you is exporting, because we have some time for it, I think. Let's go ahead and back these out, and we'll just do a quick export out. From within Crystal, like a lot of people will do Excel queries, but you're limited on, like I said, you're limited on the selection criteria. You're basically just pulling out a bunch of stuff, and then you can, use filters and things like that, but sometimes that might not be efficient. When you're doing a Crystal report, you can, specify all that information like we talked about using the report group and record selection to facilitate better data across the report. If we go into the sales order now and the order date, and let's say we just want to take a generic import, shrink down the date, and dump it into Excel. Once I have the report created and it's here in this format, I can hit this button here, is the export button. And typically what you'll do is you'll come in, you'll hit that button, you'll export this out to Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel 2097 to 2013. And you'll just save it as a disk file, or you can also just have it open. So if you select application, it's going to open the application and pop the data in there so that you can work on it and be current with it. If you select disk file, obviously it's just going to create the export file and save it out to a disk wherever you specify. So I'll just say save this to my desktop. This is going to be my export.csv or export.xls. And then when I go out to look at that, this data here is now all in that Excel file on that desktop. So if I open it up, I'm going to see pretty much the same thing. So there's some formatting things that you can do with Excel too, and Crystal, to where sometimes you might have a bunch of different groups in there, or different headers. When you open that file up in Excel, you want it to look exactly like it does. So you can see it opened it up. Obviously, this is a sample system. It's not my real computer. So I'm getting subscription error, but you basically can export it out in Excel. You can do the same thing in PDF, Word. Sometimes you can dump it out to a CSV if you need to, for like importing out to a different process in your business or whatnot. I think that pretty much covers it on the basic side. As far as saving, I mean, it's all pretty straightforward, but I wanted to cover the structure, moving data around. Obviously, we had some issues there, but if you want to review it, I know it's been recorded. And there are some other ones out there that we've done that obviously talk about it a little bit more in detail on some of the field mappings and getting the data structure to the Crystal side. And we do some other things like showing you how to insert checkboxes on your screen and, inserting freight tracking numbers, things like that. So definitely jump out there and look on our website. And I think at this point, Sherry, I'll just open it up for questions.
Hello, everyone. Let me unmute your phones to open up for questions. We did have a question regarding the recording. The recording will actually be posted out to our ISM YouTube channel within 48 hours of this webinar. So you can always jump out there, and you can reach that by clicking the YouTube icon on any one of our signatures on our emails, or you can reach out to me at AM for account manager, am@goism.com, and I can send you a link, so not a problem. Are there any questions out there? Okay, I'm not getting any questions. So with that, George, I'm going to thank you for your time today on that webinar. As he said, we do have many webinars. We try to record all of our webinars and put them out on the YouTube channel, so it's a great place to browse for information. If you do have any questions, please reach out to me again at AM account manager, am@goism.com. I thank everyone for their time today, George, especially you, for making time to present this webinar. And everyone have a great day. Keep looking at our events calendar and joining us for future webinars. Thanks, everyone.